Welcome to our airgun video today. I think we're going to have some fun with a Umarex Gauntlet in .22 caliber. We're in southeast Michigan, and specifically in an indoor range I have here in my home. Let's see if this gun is as accurate as they say. Well, let's go down and take a look. Well, at just under 30 yards, that's not too bad. Now let's find out why. This is the first Umarex air gun I've ever owned. And I want you to know it created quite a stir in 2018 at the SHOT Show. The SHOT Show is an annual convention open to the public in which you get to see everything out there from the powder rifles and the air rifles that are being offered by all the manufacturers. And there was a rumor in 2018. And that rumor was about this rifle. Umarex announced that it was bringing out a PCP air rifle. That means it's not a break barrel. It has a tube of air in it, filled by a hand pump or an aqualung tank. And that it was only $299. Whoa, there are break barrel rifles for sale for $299, and this was a PCP for $299. It was hard to find an air gun in 18 that was under $500. But that wasn't the end of the story. This air gun had a regulator. Well, you couldn't even buy PCP air guns with regulators under, I don't know, $700, $800. You often had to send them to a fine tuner who would put a regulator in it. That regulator could cost between $75 and $150, and then another $100 to install it. And here it's included in this Umarex Gauntlet for just $299. Well, they shook up everybody. If anything, the others took gratification in knowing it took Umarex quite a while to catch up with the demand and make enough of these air guns in 17 caliber, 22 caliber, and 25. This happens to be a 22. And believe it or not, I bought it on eBay. I buy all of my own guns. And some of you may be familiar with a gentleman named Hill Air Guns in North Carolina. He puts regulators into guns. And he was kind of cleaning up his shop. He had 3 or 4 air guns there that he decided to put on sale. And I liked this particular one. I needed a Umarex on the collection. And so I purchased this one from him. But he's known for his regulators, and this already had a regulator in it. So what in the world was Mr. Hill doing with this gun? Well, as he explained to me, all of these air rifles have a barrel in it that approximates the size of a McDonald's straw to shoot a pellet down. And yet many of them have large barrels like this. Almost looks like a bull barrel in a powder gun. And why? Well, something down here at the end called an air stripper, just before the pellet leaves the barrel, catches some air, and it focuses the air back down this barrel through some buffer pads that keep the gun quiet. And so we call this a moderated barrel. He added some, making a quiet gun even more quiet. I'm extremely happy about that. But let me get back to Umarex offering this gun for $299 regulated. Regulators, what do? Well, all air guns release an amount of air to push that pellet down the barrel. But if you want that to be a precision amount of air, you need a regulator. And what do you gain? Well, if we have a precision amount of air pushing it down, then we're going to have a consistent shot group, much like I just got down there a minute ago. And accuracy is always foremost on our minds. How accurate is a gun? Regulated guns are quite accurate. Secondly, even though they've regulated the air with a velocity meter, you can regulate the pressure to match the type of pellets you're using. Some pellets do better at 800 feet a second, and others do better at 850. So regulated barrels are in high demand, and this came with it just that way. The bottle in here is one that is a little different than most air cylinders that are often about the size of a quarter or 50-cent piece running down underneath the barrel. This is a bottle. Well, the newer guns have bottles now, but this isn't just any bottle. This is a bottle that's normally used in paintball guns. And Umarex decided that was the size they wanted. It held 213 cubic feet of air, and most of those long cylinders are between 200 and 250, so it holds just as much air as the average cylinder does. And the regulator was up at the front. Now that paintballs don't have regulators, or at least the majority of them don't have regulators. And so there was the regulators up here, the bottle is here. Here is a valve, easy to find. You don't have to look down the barrel to find it. Over here is the place where we put the air in, and most people will like the fact that it's, even though Umarex is a German company, this requires the Foster fitting, which we find in American guns. It's much easier just to hook up to this rather than a probe that we find in most other guns. I just put one of these little rubber tips on it to keep it clean. In addition to this gun, you have a cylinder here, which looks very much like this one here, which I'm told that even though it has the Umarex design on the back, it's very, very similar to what we find on a Benjamin Marauder or Armada like I have. I can't verify that. This is 22 caliber, and my Benjamin guns are 25. So you have this magazine, and the 22s, it'll hold 10. I'm sorry, a 10. The 17s, it'll hold 10. But if you get the 25 caliber, it'll only hold 8. In addition to this magazine, there's a single shot tray that can go in. Now, single shot trays are also important if you want accuracy, because you see, when you have a pellet like the one I'm holding in my hand, the bottom of that pellet is called a skirt, and that skirt can get bent so very, very easily. It can get bent just being pushed through a magazine like this, and out the other side like that. And once that skirt isn't perfectly round anymore, it's not going to be accurate as it goes down the barrel. Air can escape on one side, and once that pellet's out the end, it can start twirling or tumbling. So it's important that we keep these pellets in the exact shape that they were made at the factory. And a single shot tray where you put one in works. Now, another thing that works, and I've done it with these extra magazines, is I've taken a special little tool, I'll have to do a video on it one day, and we have ground down these spacers so they have rounded corners. And that way, when they're being pushed into the barrel, they're not being brushed up against a sharp edge. And that includes even the back side. you'll see that it has been beveled a bit to make sure that skirt can in no way be hurt. So I'm getting pretty much the same accuracy whether I use this magazine or the single shot tray. The gun's very quiet. I own two things now from Umarex. This air gun, and the second one you probably saw in an earlier video called Traps. And it talks about that bullet trap down there and the background and backdrop I put, the safety I put into it. You've got two cargo liners in there that are made for pickup trucks, and then a piece of particle board that's almost an inch thick as an effort to keep this range safe and pellets going down there. Well, in the bullet trap video, we started in a snowstorm, and we shot two 2-liter bottles of empty bottles of pop, and Umarex makes a red cap, and I've actually got those red caps. Renee, if you want to take a close shot of it there, that's what the Umarex caps look like, and they slip onto a 2-liter bottle. There's a center piece that you push the needle through like you're going to fill up a basketball or football, and you can put up to 80 pounds of pressure in a 2mm. Well, the funny part about that story and why I'm chuckling is I have a powder gun that's .338 Magnum. I took it to Admiralty Island, Alaska, where I hunted grizzly bear successfully, by the way. .338 Magnum is one heck of a cartridge, and it makes one heck of a bang. And those 2-liter bottles were louder than that gun. So I find it interesting. We have this very silent Umarex gun here, and we have a very loud way to make the targets bark back at you when you hit them. But anyway, you want to see how those work, tune in on a previous video that called Traps. Well, at any rate, whether you use the magazine or the single shot tray, this has an adjustable trigger. I'm really big on adjustable triggers. And just 2 pounds of pressure and this gun goes off. That really helps, when all you really have to do is kind of breathe on it. It's not good for safety, so you want to make sure this gun's always pointed in the right direction, which I do. I make all of my guns safe, but I make all the triggers very, very light triggers to boot too. There's a cheek riser here, and this is nice. First of all, I have to undo the lock, which is this strap connector here, and then this turns and you can raise it up or down so that your cheek aligns right with the scope up here. There were no iron sights on this gun, and that's good for me because I don't use iron sights, and you just have to take them off anyway if you're putting on a scope. Now, let me talk about some of the things I think that maybe were not so exciting to me when I got the gun. But let me preface again by saying this was $299. One of the things that make guns very accurate is something called a free floating barrel. And this is a free floating barrel. This barrel mount right here was not on the gun when I got it. And it started floating here and went all the way to the end, free floating. That's fantastic for accuracy. It's not good if the gun falls over or gets banged up when you're loading them in the trunk of a car, etc. So for $30, I got this barrel mount. Umarex must have thought that that had some value because months after the SHOT Show, they came out with this gun in .25 caliber, and that barrel mount is on the .25 calibers. So it's easy. It was $30. I ordered it and put it on myself in about 30 minutes. The scope mount here is only it's only an 11 millimeter, what they call a dovetail. And that's really requires scope mounts, this dovetail mount here. It really only accepts mounts that were made for, to my belief, 22 caliber rifles. Well, this is a 22 caliber pellet gun and should work just fine. But I had gotten used to larger bores, and as a result, the 13 millimeter Pinkani rail is a little wider and has spaces in it. Well, much like up here, this is a Pinkani rail. I added these to the gun since getting it to hold lasers and flashlights, etc. Well, you can get that on other guns. This is that smaller one, the 11 millimeter dovetail with no iron sights. Just make sure you get the right scope mounts for that. This has a conventional safety. This is what you normally find on a powder gun, this safety here, where a lot of air guns actually have a second trigger in here that you pull down and in the way of getting to the initial trigger. But this has that, so now we have the space inside here for any and all. This bottle holds 3,000 pounds per square inch of air and is filled, like I say, with a 3,000 pound aqua lung tank quite nicely. Another thing I didn't like were these strap mounts. This one's just fine, but if you look for just a moment, this one in most guns is up here. They must have felt that this was not strong enough, so they mounted it down here where there was more metal support underneath this stock. And the problem is that if you put it on your shoulder, it's going to try to ride down like this, and you've got to hold it tight up here to keep your gun upright. The other thing is to put the gun upside down, put your arm through it, and hold it with the gun aimed slightly downward, because that's the only way it can consistently be carried in the woods. They just didn't want to put it up here. Now remember, I'm showing you some small things here, but for $299, what a great gun this is. I saw on some of the earlier ones some complaints that the air stripper, that's that last little device up here, was cracking. And they called Umarex, and the headquarters mailed one out immediately, no cost. You don't have to mail the old one back in. That was nice. Other than that, it comes with only one magazine. I had to go on the internet, and the Umarex ones were only $9.95 for some additional ones. If that's the same one as Benjamin's using, and they're $15, $18 for those, but this is, I'm told, the same one. But they were doing everything they could to keep this gun under $299. And I think they just did a marvelous job. Let me remind you of a couple of things coming up that I think you'll want to know about. This is the bottle of water that Kroger uses. I have 8 of these. I've been saving them, wondering, what can we do? And I'm asking for your help. Please tell me, colored water, powder, who knows what we could use these for, but I saw them and I thought they could be used as a target quite well. I don't know if you remember a Steven Seagal movie, but Steven Seagal was carrying a .45 around and on an aircraft carrier, and he wanted to make it quiet. So he took a 2-liter bottle of pop and put it over this and used that as a silencer. I thought that was humorous. It worked. And we're not going to be using that bottle as a silencer. But I think it could work out to be some pretty good targets, if you will. Please put in any comments and some ideas for me. Remember that every morning I get up and I answer my own comments. I like doing that. It's one of my favorite parts of the morning. Secondly, please give us a thumbs up. I've shared with you that if you don't hit that thumbs up, Google puts a thumbs down, and they use that in their scoring method of where our videos are placed. We have coming up a program, a video on pellets, and I promise you're going to get the skinny on all of them, not just pellets, but slugs, slug liners, and hybrid slugs. I'm going to talk about when they can be accurate as can be and when they can be horrible in the accuracy department. But we're going to go through pellets in a show coming up. I've already told you we've got some drones coming that are going to pull powder targets through the air. And we've got a remote control speedboat that's going to pull targets across the ground, pond out back. So you're going to want to subscribe, at least consider subscribing so that you are aware of those particular programs when they come out. And lastly, remember to stay air gun sharp.